Holy God, you are our shelter and our strength. You are a very present help in trouble. And yet so often we find it difficult to rest in that knowledge, to rest in the refuge that is you, to trust in your presence. We acknowledge this morning so much happening around us and within us. In our world, as wars continue to rage, as genocide continues in Gaza and Congo, as the political landscape shifts here in the United States and we approach our next presidential election, as school begins for our children, for those of us who are educators and school workers, and as we all return to our year-time schedules and routines. Gracious God, open our hearts, open our minds, open our spirits, that we may look to you, that we may still ourselves in your presence. And now may the words of my mouth and the thoughts of all of our hearts bring us ever nearer to you. You are our refuge and our strength, O God, a very present help in trouble. Let God's people say amen. So if you haven't gathered, God's beloved, it's really good to be home. It has been good to breathe in our mile-high, slightly thinner than sea level Colorado air. It has been good to see, quote unquote, our mountains, as Cora, Ezra, and I call them. It is good to rest my head on my pillow and awaken to the Colorado blue sky and to the community that makes this space home and home and home. I don't know about you, but sometimes we return from vacation and then we breathe that sigh and go, oh, this is rest. It was wonderful to be away, and it feels restful to be home again. And this week, I'm struck by how home this psalm hits. Did you hear it? About the earth in constant flux? Anybody else feeling that these days? This week, as earthquakes shook the West Coast, my brother and his family in the LA area felt those quakes this week. In this time, as the sea itself is rising, lapping ever higher at our shores, and the nations indeed feel like they are in an uproar. Countries on the brink of collapse. It does feel right now that trouble is to be found at every turn. Around us, perhaps within us. It is into this space that the psalmist writes, reminding us and inviting us of that line that we know so well. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. So we've been practicing rest this summer. How many of us have been like, this feels a little out of whack, this whole rest thing? You love it. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I love it too, but it feels countercultural. We're in a culture that's all about movement. Work harder. Work longer. Go faster. How many of us Colorado drivers go, oh, it's 40 miles per hour here, that means 47 and I still won't get a ticket? Stay busy. Keep going. We're always striving for bigger, better, more. I think part of why stillness and rest have felt so good is because usually that feels like something we do kind of privately in our own homes, and we shut the door and nobody sees us napping in the middle of the day. It's different when we get to rest together as community. We can almost feel sometimes how radical rest, listening, stillness are in those moments when we sit with another person or ourselves, simply being present, simply listening. And this, our psalmist tells us, is the place in which we know God, in our stillness. Be still and know that I am God. 1 John tells us that God is love. So we know God, we know love as our refuge, as our strength, as a very present help in trouble in those moments of pause and stillness. I know for myself, occasionally when I pause, I wonder, how much of God, how much of love, how much of rest and strength and help have I missed in the midst of my going? Where has God been present and I have been too busy to see or to notice? Cora mentioned helping neighbors, and I want to tell you a story about how God can show up when we listen and slow down. Yesterday was a beautiful hot Saturday, and I was up at North Lake Park riding the Buckhorn Northern Railroad with Cora and Ezra. Thank you, Karen Scholes, for those tickets and Lions Club. The kids wanted to be in the caboose, no adults allowed, and so I'm sitting in the cattle car wondering if they're following all the rules. Sitting in this cattle car, I bumped into Cora's friend, and we'll call her Chloe, Chloe's mom. Chloe decides she wants to ride in the caboose. I guess that's where all the cool kids were. But Chloe's mom and her infant brother sit with me, and it's lovely to catch up. We'd intended play dates over the summer, but guess what I was? Too busy. Maybe not resting quite enough. So it's lovely to see each other. We sit together, we visit easily, and then we had enough tickets that I looked at my kids and said, "Want to go again?" And we had an extra one, so I offered Chloe and her mom, and Chloe said, "Mom, can I?" And her mom said, "Baby needs to eat. You go ahead with Tundiwe and Cora, and I'll be right over here feeding baby." When we got off the train after the second ride, the kids beeline for the playground, of course. And I have a moment with Chloe's mom. For those of you who are parents or grandparents or aunties, do you remember those early days postpartum? Exhaustion, on the edge of tears kind of all the time. Well, that's where Chloe's mom is as well. And I pause and sit with her and just offer a word of kindness. I am present. And I say, "Why don't you all hang out with us today?" Great. So we're going on to the next thing, and I hear about what's actually happening. Chloe and her mom and her 6-week-old brother have been kicked out of their house. They are planning to spend the night in the park. Oh no, I say. That's not gonna happen today. How easy would it have been for me to be busy and just to keep going? I'm a single mom with 2 little kids, right? What time do I have to pause? But because I paused, because I was still, because I listened, I heard a sister saying, "We're in a bad situation." Be still and know that I am God. Chloe's mom didn't want to ask for help. It was actually Chloe who let us know what was going on, not her mom. Isn't that classic? From the mouths of babes, as they say. Chloe's mom wasn't sure she wanted to receive help. But I insisted. I'm a mom, and I'm not letting you sleep in this park with 2 little kids. This is what we do for each other. This is what we do for each other. As I invited this mom and her 2 children, a family we see daily on our walk to school, with whom we regularly exchange greetings and smiles, a little girl who was in drama club with Cora. As I invited this family into my home, I thought of all of you. I thought of the people who've held me up this last year, the people who helped me move into an apartment, to furnish it, to make sure my kids and I had everything we needed. I thought of all the people who've watched my kids this year, who've shown up for us, who've shared hand-me-downs, thank you very much, and conversation, who've been patient as I have navigated and continue to navigate a messy divorce and lots of uncertainty. Be still and know that I am God. Because the truth is, it's not just me offering assistance to a friend and a neighbor. All of you are doing that as well. I can welcome them into my home, which is equipped for them because of the generosity of my community. I can extend love and grace because I am part of a beloved community that says we will stand together. This is what it means to be church, what it means to be people of God and followers of Jesus. Sometimes we think, oh, how self-sacrificing. No, this is the privilege of having something and being able to share. And I want to pause us for a moment and take a wider view, because in the midst of all of the noise in this season, the pundits and the politicians, the newscasters, the bloggers and the vloggers, everybody whose voices are getting louder and louder, telling us what to think and how to behave, let us be still. Let us cultivate quiet. Let us seek God's love. Let us pause and slow down and listen enough that we might have the privilege of hearing of another person's vulnerability or receiving another person's gift. Let us be still and know that the divine is right here among us and is with us as we're driving down the street and as we go into a restaurant and as we're navigating school. Because we know when we are still and quiet and listening, we know what is good and kind and just. We know God's call to love. What is good and kind and just is what we are called to rest for and to work for, to live for, and I'm going to say this, and to vote for. I will never and can't, right? But I wouldn't even if I could tell you who to vote for or how to vote, but our faith must inform how we call our wider society to be in relationship together. Our stillness, our listening has to inform those wider choices. Because here's what our voting can do. It can call our communities into love, love for our neighbors. It can call our communities into access, For those among us living with disabilities or chronic ailments, those of us who are recovering from addiction, those of us who are fleeing violence. How we vote can say we are a community and we want to be a country where there is dignity for those among us who continue to live under the shadows of shame and oppression. How do we vote for inclusion for those in our society who have consistently been isolated and left out? How do we use our votes as voices to amplify messages of love and belonging and justice? It matters, God's beloved. It matters. Your votes, your tax dollars mean that our neighbor and friend who stayed in my home last night has places to go and resources to turn to. Those are choices we have made as a community. It's easy to say, well, we got to keep politics out of church. We do need to keep partisanship out of church. I agree with that. But Jesus was profoundly political. How often did he say, you feed the hungry? That's a political statement about communal life. You clothe the naked. You house the homeless. How often did he say, I will break this Sabbath rule because it is unjust today? I will heal because people deserve dignity and wholeness and integration. In John 13, verse 34, we hear Jesus say, as I have loved you, so are you to love one another. Believe you me, I'm hearing that as I'm saying, you're not sleeping in the park tonight. And I'm not giving my life, I'm just sharing my home. Just sharing my groceries. That's all. As I have loved you, so are you to love one another. And I'm going to speak very explicitly on one particular thing in our community. I believe if we're taking Jesus seriously, it quickly becomes clear where we are to stand in relationship to a proposed resource center that will support families like my friend who is staying in my home. Maybe you know the resource center is proposed in what is now First Christian Church's building. I'm going to share a little bit more information about that later. But there's a lot of opposition to this because we are afraid of people who are in need a lot of the time. Sometimes we think that need is catching. I want you to hear that your pastor has been in need. And because you knew me, you loved me through that need. And I'm not the only one here. I know many of us have stories about our own times of need. So this is an opportunity. Yeah. If you feel like it, you can just give a wave and say, I've had that moment. I've had that moment. This is an opportunity for us to say, as a community, we want to have ways to support people like us. People who are at their lowest. People needing an extra support. This is the community of love and justice that we want to be. We rest, we are still so that we can hear our own hearts, so that we can attend to our own breath, so that we may know that God is not just out there somewhere nebulous, but between us and within us, and that love grounds us and moves us. Be still and know that I am God. So perhaps you've been watching this little video. Perhaps you've been noticing the stillness of the water, the slight movement of the plants, the majesty of the mountains. You can either continue to watch it or you can close our eyes. Be comfortable in your body. And you may have done this meditation before, but we're going to do it together. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. Gracious God, how often our culture feels like it calls us to a frenzy of doing, a performance of busyness. We confess that sometimes it feels like our faith calls us to that also. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Gracious God, in stillness, help us to quiet those voices. Help us to hear your invitation to simply be. To be with you, to be with your creation, to be with your beloved children, all of them, to be with each other, to be with ourselves, to simply be. In this coming week, call us to stillness again, that we may know that you are our God, and that we may rest in your love. In Christ we ask it. Let God's people say amen.